Hey, true believers. Chris Mack here, coming at you with New Mutants, number 18. Now, this was a book that I've been biting at the bit to get re-uploaded. I checked my backups. The original video, gone. But that's okay, because I cannot ever gush enough over this issue. This book is special because it's the first appearance of Warlock, and of course the first full appearance of the Demon Bear. Now, I say full appearance because his cameo appearance is back in New Mutants number 3, which I am hoping to procure. And if anybody has a copy of that, hit me up. But this cover by Bill Sienkiewicz, oh man, you get the idea of what's going on. And this kind of reminds me of, I think it was Liam Sharp, the guy that does the artwork for Green Lantern right now. He made a post talking about how he loves to do his own covers because then people kind of get an idea of of the art they're going to expect on the inside. And I have to kind of agree with that, because there's times where, you'll get an absolutely stunning cover and then you'll kind of open it up and then it's always, a crapshoot of if the book's going to be gorgeous, kind of mirroring that, or if it's going to just kind of be sort of subpar. 'Cause I'm not saying that, art is bad, because art is subjective. But there are times where you're like, let's say, for example, you get an Alex Ross cover and you're like, oh, wow. And then you open it up and you're just sort of like, you know what I mean? And again, that's just, the subjectiveness of one's eye. But again, I just love it when an artist like here can do the whole book, because it just really adds and keeps the tone of the book going. So with all that said, let's jump into this thing. I love this book. And I think what really, other than it being a classic story, I think what really drags me into it is the fact that I'm a huge horror fan. And here, in 1984, the print date of this was August 1984. So, we're at the height of, Terminator. What else came out around that year? Well, around that, we had a lot of Halloweens, a lot of Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. And so this really adds, especially these blood reds. And it's supposed to be a blanket, because here we see Danny looking under her blanket in fear. He's out there, the demon bear that murdered my parents, watching, waiting for me. And this checkered bedspread breaks down into the image of an evil bear. Oh, it just gives you chills, man. And before we go any further, this is called Death Hunt. It says Stan Lee presents, Chris Claremont writing, Bill Sienkiewicz artist, Glynis Wine colorist, Tom Orzechowski doing the lettering, Ann Nasanti the editor, and Jim Shooter editor-in-chief. And then again right there, boom! Look at that all-star cast on this team, y'all. Whew, yeah. Beautiful work right there by the art team. I'm going ahead and flip the page. And then this, I kind of want to read this. I know I don't try to read too many of the panels because, you don't, when you're doing a review, you don't want to stretch it out. But check this out. Since its founding, Professor Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters has been a haven for mutants where they could learn who and what they were. And beyond that, their place in society, their destiny, and relative safety. No longer. That's how you open a book after leading up with that other panel. And so we see a young girl crying, and she tries to warn the professor. And the professor saying, "Get downstairs, child. You'll be safe in the danger room." "Not without you." "I cannot. I must try to stop this slaughter." So you see this is the army or the military. You see cannons shooting at the institute. The army's done its work well. They've encircled the mansion. I must use my telepathic powers to try to reach their commander. We mean no harm. We surrender. And it's such a dire situation. He's pulling himself up by the drapes to try to scream out to their commander via, his telepathic powers. And the next panel after this, I'm not going to give that away because it's a spoiler, and great work once again by the art team. So what we're going to do instead, because I don't want to spoil any more of that, needless to say, it's very much a tie-in to Days of Future Past. Days Past, blah, blah, blah. And so, so right here, we're going into the Demon Bear story, and then we're also working in how Rachel Summers is afraid to talk to Professor X, because I think this is one of the times where she starts to come, where she's back from that future reality, or however it is she comes back. And so I like how they kind of work this into the story. You know, she goes, it's strange, everything's so peaceful. It's hard to believe that all I remember my entire life hasn't even happened yet. If I'm lucky, if my plan works, perhaps it never will. And so before we can get any further with Rachel, we get to our team, the New Mutants. And the artwork is just mind-boggling. But I love it. I mean, look at how Sunspot here, that Kirby crackle going on. You know, Cannonball just shooting past, and then Magma here in the back. Gorgeous, gorgeous work. And I think one reason that I've really gotten into the New Mutants lately is when they started this book. You know, they're young, they are inexperienced. As we know, when we first are introduced, like back in the days, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby days, when we're introduced to Cyclops and all them, they have relatively, relatively ease over their powers. And then we get into the Chris Claremont era in '94, and everyone, I mean, there's things for them to learn, especially about teamwork, like between Warpath and Wolverine and all that stuff. But they're relatively comfortable with their powers. As with the New Mutants here, like Sam, for example, he's still having a hard time learning how to maneuver while he's blasting, and he's paranoid about hitting Magma here, and so he's talking about how learning how to cut loose in another direction from a trick that Nightcrawler taught him. So this is just like, you know, you get to see how these New Mutants have to struggle with how to use their powers without hurting people, so that, you know, either they can go on to be part of a team, or in this case, Xavier didn't want to have a team, but that's explored in the Uncanny book, or how to reintegrate themselves into the real world without being, you know, having to worry about accidentally hurting someone, is when, you know, the mutant powers develop. And then we even get some, you know, kind of, you know, romance where we're talking about how Sam has a crush on Magma, and she just, either she's oblivious to it or she doesn't care. And so that really helps flesh out characters, especially here where Ileana and Danny are in the booth. And I just love how Lockheed here is just chilling with them. And so they're kind of poking at both Sam and Magma in a friendly manner. And then we get into Danny and what this whole bear thing's about. So she's thinking to herself about Ileana and how she was tortured in limbo. And I can never remember who it was that tortured her. It wasn't Mephisto. I can never remember his name. If you guys can remember his name, let me know down in the comments. But anyway, there's another plot point here that Claremont is building up, which I don't want to get too far into. But see, it's used organically. So Danny's sitting here and kind of giving her thoughts about Ileana and this adventure they had. And then she's also talking about how she's sort of holding Ileana at arm's length about this whole Demon Bear thing. And again, we get a shot of it here. She goes, I wish the professor was here. I never thought I'd admit it, but I need him. All week I've been seeing my bear in my dreams. Each time the image is more distinct. It's nearby. And it's hungry. So we start to feel the impending doom of this issue and the weight that's going to go on. Which we're cut to another interlude, which Claremont, I always felt, was masterful at being able to jump from different beats of a story to kind of give you a break. So you get that whole thing about the Demon Bear and lots of heaviness. And then we jump back to Rachel, and she's talking about how she wants to speak to the professor. And Ileana's like, well, who are you? And before she can explain, before she can find out Rachel's name, Rachel takes off because, Rachel says, well, who are you? And she goes, I'm Ileana Rasputin. And she's like, it can't be. She goes, what have I done? She said she was Colossus's little sister, but she's a teenager. The Ileana I remember was killed with Professor Xavier when the army destroyed the mansion. That won't happen for years yet. How can Ileana be the same age as she was the day I saw her die? So we start to wonder if Days of Future Past reality has been thrown off kilter just a little bit. And then boom, interlude. And he even says it, interlude. And I love this, how he just says the star far from our own. And again, it's just very poetic in the way he writes it. And I love how, I don't know if this was Sienkiewicz's idea or if this was kind of the art team's idea of how they laid out the paneling, because we get this. And then we kind of get like star chart points of where our eyes are supposed to be, how it goes here, 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 here. Not many people do stuff like this anymore. It's creative. It was very avant-garde in my opinion. And then we get an establishing shot. And it talks about there's a, what does he say? A stranger, a fugitive. And so right here, this is the first appearance of Warlock. And then after we see this creature, and I love how everything is more or less shadowed in a very noir sense. And it just continues on the next page. He's found me. And we don't even really get a chance to see, what's his father's name? Magnus? Or Magnus? I can't remember his father's name, but see how we just get these burning yellow on top of just jet black. And we don't know what, just think about 1984. Warlock was not a character anybody knew. So everyone's reading this going, what in the heck is happening? And so, it just, I love it. I love it, love it, love it, love it. Especially the way we kind of go from all this future sci-fi, techno-organic stuff, and then it just melts and just kind of dissolves into snow. And we come back to Danny. And I don't want to go any more into this part, but needless to say, she's training in the danger room. And then Claremont's words on top of this gorgeous, just very simple yet effective silhouette where we just get her hunting. And even though we can tell this is, the white from the page, you can get the idea that it's cold, isolated. It's a bitter wind. But my uniform's so well insulated, I barely notice. I could use a mask though. My face is nearly frozen. Visibility stinks. Worse, the ridge is thick with rocks and trees. It's a perfect spot for an ambush, which is exactly what I want. And so we get another moment with Ileana where we're talking about her training, and Ileana's like, well, why bears? She's like, well, I'm the leader. I'm trying to push myself where if I can't use my mutant power, I'm not useless in a fight. And as they're leaving the danger room again, build up, horror, tones, beats, yes. And then again, I like how we get kind of this tension again with Ileana, because she goes, Ileana didn't believe a word I said, and didn't bother hiding her anger either. She trusted me with her secrets, things she hasn't even told the X-Men, or even our best friend Kitty Pryde. It hurts that I won't do the same. She'd help if I asked. They all would. They don't understand. This is something I have to do alone. And Danny here, back when they were in the control room in the booth at the beginning, she's talking about how she doesn't really trust Ileana because she is part demon. And she goes, that part of her is as evil as the bear is. So you can kind of see where Danny has these conflicting emotions about who Ileana is. And then we get this resolve. We see her missing and mourning her parents. We see resolve and what she needs to do. So she actually goes out into the literal snow. And she goes, bear, come, butchers of innocence. Danielle Moonstar summons you. Show yourself. And then this is where we get one of the most, in my opinion, iconic paneling of this story. Just look at the scale of the bear compared to Danny. And it's effective. I mean, there's not all this stuff going on in the background. It's just simple white. And just enough to see what the hair is. Shadows. Claws. And like one of these claws is just like the size of Danny. And so we get into the battle, and she finds out some things about the bear that she doesn't understand. And needless to say, something happens, which leads into the next book. But what I like here is where Rain finds out what's going on. The rest of the team just jumps to help her, even though Dani tries to keep everything to herself. This is where she said they would help if she needed it. And here we are, her friends, her teammates running to her aid. So what happened? I would highly suggest, guys, if you can, support your local comic shop if you can, if they have this copy, and pick it up. This is definitely something you want in your collection. This is one of those definitive New Mutant stories. And yeah, oh my god, guys. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think this story is the basis of what they're going to be doing for the New Mutants movie, which, fingers crossed, that movie ever comes out. You know what I mean? And if you guys have enjoyed this review, we'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little bear bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. You can come to the channel, and we love to have a dialogue and hear your feedback and just interact with y'all down in the comments below or on our social media pages, which I will make sure to leave the links down in the description below. So with all that said, if you guys want to see the next 2 parts of this story reviewed, because it goes into 19 and 20, let me know, because I have the run and I would love to re-review these. So if you want to hear that, let me know. And then before we go, there's another one that I just happened to pick up this weekend that I'm itching to review. And if you guys would love to see a review on it, it is the Marvel graphic novel number 4, which is the first appearance of the New Mutants. So if y'all would love to see a review on this, let me know and I will dive into it. But with that said, I hope you all have enjoyed the Demon Bear, the first part, and I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.